Like somebody walks in your house and they're like, "There's no way that's the actual sea monkey," and yes, that's the sea monkey. So, what's the worth of something like that, right? Because it's something all of that hit all of our childhoods at one point. Why isn't that price as high as fine art?
Hey, I'm Alex Morrissey. Welcome to Tradecraft. Each episode, I discuss the creative life and process with the people responsible for the books and comics we love. The comic book business is filled with lots of nice people, but today's guest goes one step further. Jimmy Palmiotti is a great guy. He's done it all in comics. Jimmy made his name as an inker, took a chance in self publishing, ran an imprint for Marvel, and ultimately found his true creative joy in writing comics. On titles like Daredevil, Harley Quinn, Jonah Hex, Painkiller Jane, and Power Girl. Today, he continues to write high profile projects but also runs his own show, Paper Films, the independent imprint he founded with his wife, artist Amanda Connor, and writers Justin Gray, Craig Whedon, and Patrick Wedge, plus an impressive cadre of top tier creative partners. One of these books, Deep Sea, is up on Kickstarter until October 2nd. Jimmy also writes the Gunslinger series for Todd McFarlane and the first issue of his much anticipated Punisher limited series with Dan Penosian comes out next Wednesday, October 8th. Over the nearly 35 years we've known each other, it's always a joy spending time with Jimmy. He gives his work and everyone he's with his full attention, plus a healthy serving of undiminished positivity and fun. Jimmy's Brooklyn Italian nature emerges during our talk, so if you hear some tapping or thumping, it's only his fingers and hands explaining his point to the table. Now kick back and enjoy. This is me with Jimmy Palmiotti.
Hey, Alex.
What's up, Jimmy?
Same old stuff, man. Just working, working, working.
Just keeping the lights on.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's part of it, right? I mean, I love doing what I do, but there's also those stupid little things called bills that keep coming in, and they don't go away. Nobody says to you, "Oh, you've been doing it so long. Let us just pay your bills from now on."
we,
That doesn't happen to anybody.
we decided your value is just you, and that's enough for
I,
the
I
world.
I think the world has just gotten greedier in the past 10 years. Everybody's making less money than they made, and everything costs more money. So it's just, I think greed is like the number one. People ask you, what's the villain in the book, and I'm like, all I know is it's probably greed based.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Easy to write that.
It's always like, remember the old stories, like, it's like love, jealousy, money. Like it's all money now. Like it's like wars get started for money. Everything gets started for money now.
Yeah, I mean, everything we see, it's either revenge or greed. I feel like our whole government is built on revenge or greed.
Mm-hmm.
Like every move being made is about revenge or greed. And it's a bad place to be in. We have to get out of that. I'm missing the days of the hippies. We need the hippies back.
We live in the post hippie land up here in Asheville. And
Yes,
I gotta say, they have a great me first attitude in that they've adopted in the last 50 years of being up here.
it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
It's not. They didn't want to adopt that.
yeah,
If you remember the late '60s and early '70s, it was very much about helping everybody and doing everything. And
mm-hmm.
even Sesame Street was about helping your neighbor, and everything was about helping everybody else. Nobody's different. Everybody's the same. We all want the same things. We didn't make anybody that we didn't know the enemy.
Yeah,
And we also, I like to say, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, right? So I like to say that we embraced all the other cultures because we got a lot of good food out of it. Um, and now it's like now we have to just this culture doesn't belong here and that one doesn't belong. It's so ridiculous, over the top, and mean and greedy
yeah.
of late, and it's a shame. And I think the internet didn't help.
Nope.
I also think we have a bunch of people in office right now that are just it's all revenge. It feels like revenge and power grabs and financial money motivated things. And I was just reading about the Hollywood studios. Some of the streamers want to take off the old shows because they don't want to pay the actors and the royalties for the people that so they want to take some of the old shows off so they don't have to keep paying these royalties anymore for them. And I'm just like, oh my god, how cheap do you have to be? We have these actors that are maybe in their 60s and 70s and 80s
Yeah.
getting these residual checks and probably living off them, and they want to save a couple of dollars. It's all backwards, right? And it's all this 1% garbage. People, we have billionaires, then we have people with nothing, and we're slowly losing the middle class. And I mean, that should be the villain in every comic these days.
Yeah, I used to say that nobody became a billionaire without, doing harm. That was like my line. And then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. There's people like J.K. Rowling. This is before she like, went wherever she went." And I'm like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
guess not." Like, I mean, but maybe Paul McCartney's a billionaire. He's a billionaire, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably good for, and look, guys like him, they do a lot of good things. Springsteen, all these people that filthy rich, and they worked for it and they got it. Those are usually the ones we find out later how much they were giving to
Hmm.
to charities, but they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I know some people that are very rich. They donate a lot of money to hospitals and play kids hospitals and everything, but they don't want any attention for it. They don't want their name in the press, and
Hmm.
and God bless them. But when we have these blatant billionaires and they do nothing for anyone but themselves, and they play this game popularity contest, and it's a dangerous thing to do. I talked to Amanda. We played the lottery the other day. We didn't win, but it was like for I don't know. It was like for $440 million, and I just told her, I said we'd be pretty good billionaires because we'd be like sharing it because we already have what we need. So
And here's the weird thing, like you would think ostensibly like, oh, if you had all this money, you wouldn't do anything. You're like, I don't have to do anything. But like every time that floats in your head, you go, I can make all these things. I could do all this stuff. And it's weird. Maybe it's the artist in
yeah, you
us.
can you can I like animals. How many animal shelters I could help out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like at least try to help the things that can't help themselves,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, buy up land and keep it natural and keep it parkland.
Uh-huh.
Help animals, help animals. You know, other countries help clean their water supplies. There's so many good things you can do
Mm,
with your money, and it's like, and I for some reason the the people in power, all different these billionaires and everything, for some reason they lost track of that along the way. Something happened where it's just about getting more money and making more money, and it's not a great time. I'm hoping the powers that be. I grew up in comics. We grew up. We believe in that good is going to always win.
sure.
In the end, hang in there long enough, good will win. But in the meantime, a lot of bad happens. So, unfortunately, that's the reality of it. But we tend to. They want us to feel powerless,
Yep.
but we know that's not true because government starts in local government,
We're
and
exchanging we're exchanging long-term security for short-term gains. That's what's happening right now.
yes, and I was brought up. I was brought up. Three brothers, and my dad had a little paint store in Manhattan, and my mom was a full time, mom. And we didn't have much money, and we saved. We saved money. We worried about when things were going to go wrong, or what if happens if our parents get sick. These are things that we always had to save, save, save because we never had.
Hmm.
And it's probably where my work ethic came from was basically, you have to work to take care of everybody. So you should do your job. You should do it in on time. You should, be treat your bosses and be loyal to the places you work on. Of course, that's changed over the years. These things were ingrained in us at that point, and I'm a kid. I think I'm a borderline. I was born in '61, so I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer, but I'm like a cusp of Gen X kind of boomer.
You're very Gen Xy boomer. If I had to like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And it's we take care of our people, and we're making sure. something happens in the future, we have a plan. We taught to plan ahead and expect the worst at some on some
Mm,
level. But I hear, I have friends that are in their 20s and 30s, and they tell me they only have, 2 grand in the bank, and
right.
they haven't paid their rents in months and rent in months and stuff like that. And I hear these stories, and I'm like, my goodness, what is the future going to be? 40 people living in an apartment, and then a billionaire has a house the size of a small state
Yeah.
and doesn't know what to do, and has 48 bathrooms in his house that he's never seen. So like the whole thing is all upside down right now. But the reality I do grab onto is that I make a difference by paying it forward and also being the person you want to be. Be the person, treat the people the way you want to be treated, and I feel like that's all I can do. And then I get involved in local government, because I have a say in that. And there, when you have a mayor that lives in town, there's nowhere to hide.
No, right.
So,
They have to eat. They've got to go to the
they
grocery
have they
store.
have to go out and eat. They have to go to the supermarket. I see them all the time,
Yeah.
and you know, but anyway, we're here for comic books. Comic books, it's the escape, right? Is it? It's the
It is the
escape from
escape.
all this.
But I'm gonna take what you said there, and I'm going to
Okay.
apply it historically in my from my experience. That when
Okay.
you, because I think when it, like I got in at 91 at Marvel. That's when I started working there.
Me too.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
I noticed this immediate connection between you and like everyone around you. Like you are a connector. Like you go into space and you're there, pressing the flesh, talking, and just becoming integral to other people's experiences. And I mean, it felt as if you were a season pro back in 91 and
Yeah.
92. Now,
Yeah.
because you were so adept at integrating your personality into your career at that time. And I thought that was like, and in the terms of like taking care of others, like that was always a question from you. Like to me, you'd be like, how are you doing? What are you working on? Do you have anything? Do you like, you would always like go reach out to me and say, hey, give this person a call, do this, whatever. And like, listen, if we're both in the business at the same, for the same clock start,
Right.
you know, I didn't have that connection that you had built up that quickly. And I think that was probably a huge, huge element to where you went, through the 90s, because it was a huge transition, Jimmy. Like a huge transition.
Yeah. I mean, I like people. You know that.
Yeah,
I'm interested in other people. I also read people pretty well. I could see when they have weight on their shoulders. I could see when they're having a hard time and stuff like that. It's because I walk around with my eyes open and I'm very present. And empathy is a big part of that, understanding what people are going through. And then, look, I used to joke that a lot of people didn't get work because they didn't know when to leave the room. You know, they became annoying to the editors or the assistant editors. They became annoying. They would come in and talk to them and hand in work, but they would never leave. And I would hear the editors go, I can't get rid of this guy. He's in my office all day.
uh-huh.
You know, and like so, I was very hyper aware of my job was for the editors to make sure I made their job easier. Meaning, they give me work. I do a great job. I deliver it early, not the deadline, but I deliver it a day or two early, and then I see if they have more work. Now, as far as the people in the office, we had the bullpen. Remember all those guys,
Sure.
Steve Bunch and all those guys, right? Ariana and all those. And then we had John Romita Sr. and Virginia in one room, and then the editors were all there. And for me, I felt like I was walking into a place where everyone had more experience than I did. So I wanted to absorb whatever I could. Like I knew whatever time I had. When John Romita pulled me into his little room there and said, "Oh, let me show you how to fix that leg," that to me was like, okay, I'm getting a gift. Like this
Yeah.
is a huge gift, and let me pay attention 1,000,000,000%, and then show them that I listen. Let me show them in my work that I listen. I was absorbing this because I really wanted it badly, and I understood how everybody in that place they had three or four different goals they were going for. The editors wanted to get the books out. They wanted to sell well and get the books out. The people that were assistant editors wanted to become editors, but they also wanted to have the talent names around them, right? So they can pull it, make a phone call and say, "Hey, Jimmy, I need this done. Can you do it?" And my job was to be available to them. And I loved the bull. I loved hanging out with the bullpen because they would just tell me, like, we would talk like the buddies hanging out in a bar.
Hmm.
I would have a question and they're like, "No, no, let me show you how to do that." So even when I came in later with Joe with Marble Knights, like the bullpen, I used to take them out to lunch. I'm like, these guys are saving my ass all the time. The least I can do is buy them lunch and some drinks once a week.
Right.
These people, everyone around me was very important. I didn't, I am the guy that if there's one quiet person, I will hyper focus on them and pull them aside and say, "Hi, you doing okay?" Or, is there, you want to add something to this? Maybe you didn't want to say out loud, and just to kind of feel them out. I don't know. I don't, it's the thing I got from my mom and dad. My mom had to wrangle four boys at all times, so five, including my dad. So she had to be hyper aware of everybody in the room. I just think I think it has to do with liking people initially. I mean, if you don't like people, look, there are people, a lot of people that think other people are annoying. And I used to run into artists up there that used to say things like, "Oh, that guy's annoying,"
Mm.
or "You don't want to talk to that guy because he's a pain in the neck, or he doesn't know when to shut up," and it's that. And I always thought, okay, you know what? When somebody's talking too much, that means they're nervous, right? That's
Yep.
how I deciphered that. And if they're why are they nervous? Because they're insecure about their work or whatever. So I never was quick to dismiss somebody when somebody would tell me that guy's an idiot. I would always go, well, I think your experience is different than mine. He's very nice. Actually, I talked to there's one person in particular, people with bad mouth, and I used to make it my job to when I see him to take time to talk to him because I'm like, okay, he's getting a bad rap because he's nervous. That's the way he's just nervous.
Yeah.
But he's a really good artist, and I just think that that was a world where people just didn't have time to spend with people, and I get it. But it's not who I was. Everyone was important to me. Everyone still is important to me. I do my best with people. Sometimes, look, I love the cons because I get to meet the fans and we get to talk a little bit.
Hmm.
You know, but I think it's part of my job is to make sure when I'm handing them my work, they remember me. They look at the work, they remember the work. I want them to remember I got their job. I made their life easier by getting that job done early for them. And usually, this, usually if I handed in something early, they'd have another job waiting for me.
Sure.
They'd be like, "Here, you want to do this book?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, give it to me. When do you need it?" But it's just my personality. Not everybody is that outgoing. I think of having a very quiet childhood where I didn't talk that much, kind of like I flipped the story somewhere in between, and I became a guy that doesn't shut up. But I think you have to. I think there's a little part of that you have to be grounded and you have to be comfortable with yourself, and
Hmm.
that's definitely I got that from my dad. My dad definitely all the way was a guy who. My dad was a guy who when he walked. I remember he walked anywhere he went into bowling alley, bar, whatever. Everyone knew my dad
Mm.
and come up to him, and I would see people come. And when he passed away, I never even saw so many people in my life at his funeral. I didn't know who half of them were, and they're just telling me stories about my dad. And I realized I got a little bit of that from my dad. I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to get some of that, and yeah, it's just it's
It's a certain
important.
magic that people possess. And I think if we did a poll, you probably rank up pretty high in the comic industry of that personality type.
Oh, yeah, I think we have a lot of people like that. I just think, I think my 9 years in advertising before comics really helped me not be the blubbering idiot sometimes that a lot of people are because we're so happy to get the jobs, right?
Yeah.
I've always been like, how much is it paying? I want to know the other part of it. Like
Right.
what do you need this and what's it paying? What do you expect me to do? But I think it's also it's a tough business because a lot of people don't know how to read the editors sometimes.
Hmm.
The editors give you work or they hire you and then you're like, they go, okay, thanks.
Right. Right. Right.
You work like you pencil a book for like 3 weeks or a month, and they
Yeah.
hand it to, and they go, "Yeah, it looks great, thanks."
I remember that distinctly because they make you jump through hoops, to get in.
Oh God, yeah.
Try it again, try it again. You bring it in, you do this for years, and then you get your
Yes.
first assignment and you walk in, you hand it to them, and that's the line. Okay, it looks great. And that's it. You're like, but wait, where's the none of it?
Well, when we did Marvel Nights, Joe and I talked about we made Wednesday our call day. So we'd spend Wednesday morning and Wednesday later in the day because we had people from all over the world, and we call them and go through the work. How you doing? How's the work coming? We got the latest pages. This looks amazing. What page you on now? Oh, that's a good. Okay. Any issues? Any you need guys need any reference? Quick phone calls to all our. We only had 4 books, right? So we had 4 teams. We call, and we try to call every week or every other week to check in on our guys because we talked about it. We said that was the thing we felt we weren't getting.
Yeah.
What I get now from the editors is an email, and it says, "Hey, the book's got to go out tomorrow. Can you do this, 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 and that?" And can you look it over? And I only have 24 hours to get this out. I get that, or I'm like, I'm an afterthought. Like they'll go, oh, by the way, do you have any cover ideas?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So that happens a lot, but that's just an experience. I think that gets better over time. When we started, when we were in the business, you had to have many books in the drawer
Hmm.
before the if a book was coming out that week and and you were still working on the issue after it, you were doomed.
Right.
Like that was not a thing. Now it's a reality. Now it's like they're right up to the last day on stuff.
I mean, it's an interesting thing because you can clearly remember the day when email came into play and like being able to send
Yeah.
files became a thing online.
Yeah.
And those timelines, we felt like, because, I mean, hustling, well, FedEx, you're like, well, I'll just take the train in, like, I mean, there were
Oh
all
yeah.
these little games you would play to try to like buy time. And now there is no time because it was eaten up for the last 25 years.
Yeah, we used to blame FedEx for everything.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I did. I actually had FedEx lose an entire book of mine. That I inked an entire book. They lost it. It was never found, by the way. To this day, it was never found. And what I had to do was get the Xeroxes I had, and I had to ink with over a light board and ink the whole book again.
God.
And I brought it in. I walked it in the door. I was lucky because I was in Brooklyn, and I literally, if they said, "Hey, can," they would call me sometimes and say, "Hey, I'm going to be working late around 6. Do you want to pick? I got this job for you. Pick it up, and then maybe we'll grab a bite to eat." And I was like, "Okay." Or I would say to the editor, like, "Hey, you want to grab a quick bite and a beer?" And they're like, "Sure." And we go out and we talk about stuff, and then I take the work home. Part of it for me was social.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just like I said. Now it's like digital, and that's great because you can literally scan it and there it is.
Yeah.
But that also gives us a false idea of we have all the time in the
Yeah.
world, and we don't. And listen, I mean, we there's a certain amount of editors that think you're standing by your email watching it.
Mm,
You know, but when I'm writing, I literally turn everything off, and I put my phone upstairs. I don't even keep it near me
good for
because I'm
you.
trying to focus on my work. And then I go back to my phone and there's like 80 panic
Right.
texts, like where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Um, but it's a different world, man. I'm just look. I'm happy that I'm working. That's basically at the end of the day, I'm happy. I'm happy I'm working.
I mean, that's probably a reason why you're still doing this. Like, how did the idea form for you guys to start? I guess you started an event before you started Marvel Knights, right? Like you did event,
Yes,
but like, how did that formulate? Because, and it was a weird time. The mid '90s was an odd time to say, let's start something because
it was the time to end things.
yes,
It was the time to end things because Image already happened,
yep,
and we so Joe and I were only 2 guys, right? And we figured, all right, we do our own comic book, and I think we invested 60 grand. That was our investment for event, and we asked around how to do it, who to get printers, and all that kind of stuff. But we just figured, what's the worst that can happen? Like we were just like, let's try it, and we wrote the book, and we both never really wrote a comic before, and it went on. It was like pure adrenaline. Ash number one was pure adrenaline.
hmm
Like you look at the comic, you can kind of see how it is. It's just a ball of energy. It's not very good, but it's a great ball of energy, right? we thought like, all right, I think we kept seeing that we were doing stuff that we were making. They were, the royalty pool is 5% on a dollar, right?
Right.
After you hit 60,000. Back then it was 40,000 books. Now it's 60,000. And we were like, what would it be like to get 95% of that, or 80% of that? Like the royalty we're getting for the 5%, imagine we can get all of it? Like, how would we do that? Oh my God. And then we'd have to put out our own book. So we looked at it like, let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? And we got lucky because we made friends with the whole crew at Wizard Magazine. I mean,
Yeah.
Joe and I would go up there like once every 2 months, take a bunch of people to lunch. We talk about what we're doing. We bring some artwork in. Garrett would want a cover done for the book, so we
Mm-hmm.
do a cover for him. And we started getting a lot of press in that magazine. And that magazine, boy, it was like a billboard
Yeah.
in Times Square. Everybody saw that magazine. That was a lot of my advertising background. Put into work there. Like, and again, relationships. I had guys like Rob Sampson, who was a friend of mine till he passed, and there's people there that I just really had great times with, and we did a lot of work for them. But it was about getting out there and putting your name out there, and with Event Comics, we did Painkiller Jane, we did Ash, we did 22 Brides, we did a couple of books, and before you know it, like 2 years, a year and a half in, we're sitting up at DreamWorks with the Jeffrey Katzenberg and all these guys wanting to buy, and even with Painkiller Jane later on, we sold it as a TV movie and then a series, and so it paid off for us. I mean, it showed us like, hey, if you do your own thing, somebody might be interested.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a lot of that now, but back then there was only Image Comics, and there was small books, or Dark Horse would offer a thing like where they own 50%, but they control the media rights and this and
Yep.
that. And I just didn't want. I wanted to see if we could do something where nobody else is controlling the rights but us.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked out pretty good. But then we got boggled down with a lot of other work, and then Marvel Knights got plopped into our lap. And it's the thing about Joe and I being New Yorkers is like, ooh, it's a real challenge. Like,
Yeah.
take 4 books. And we came back like a-holes. We were like, well, we want this much, and we want the penthouse of the building.
Dude, that was so funny going up there. Like going up there, I was like,
Yeah,
how did they get in here?
uh, that because they wanted to put us on one of the floors, and I knew Glenn Herdling had an office on 13. I used to go up there, and he was like doing advertising stuff out of there. And I said, why don't you move those guys into downstairs where they should be so they can interact with you guys? Give us the penthouse. And they were like, you don't want the penthouse because it gets hot up there and there's no elevator. You have to walk up to the 13th floor. And I'm like, even better, we can hear when people are coming up. We can
Yep.
hear them walking. So we have some warning. And that was perfect for us. Of course, it was air conditioned up there. And we wound up putting a table and chairs up on the roof and stuff like that and made it a second home. But it was just at the point where we were like, let's ask for everything we want and see what they give us. And they negotiated because they felt like they got screwed on the Heroes stuff that they did that with Jim Lee and Todd and all those guys.
Yep.
Marvel had an attitude that they kind of got screwed on that deal for some reason. I don't get it why. So they were really hard on us at first making a deal because they didn't want. I think they felt like the Image guys came in, grabbed the money, and then ran.
Hmm.
And we told them we'll give them 2 years. We'll be there 2 years. And by having an office in the building, it was again showing them that we're committed. You can come up at any time and harass us,
Yeah.
and they did, and they did.
Dude, it was a big, big deal. It felt very different than when the guys left to form Image because they kind of broke off and did their thing. Like this felt like, whoa, we're like the machine is letting these guys get their hands on the controls and kind of make a thing happen, which was so way out of the box.
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, it was 4 titles that were two of them didn't exist yet, and the other two were canceled. Daredevil and Punisher were canceled at the time. And then Inhumans over the years would have a mini series, but no regular series. And then,
Right.
the same thing with Black Panther. Like he would have a series in the early '70s and then one in the '80s for a couple of issues, but it never felt grounded. And we went for the characters we felt lived in New York, put their feet on the cement. They didn't fly. They swing, but they wouldn't fly. They weren't super powerful, although the Inhumans were capable of madness. Um, and we also love, we Joe and I were both Fantastic Four fans, so we said let's bring in the humans. Let's do Black Panther. Nobody's doing Black Panther.
Yeah.
How cool is that character? It was just for us. It was a challenge. They challenged us. They said you need to do this. If it doesn't sell this number, you're out. If it doesn't do that, you guys are done. If your book's late, we're gonna take 10 grand off you right away. Like there's all these
Wow.
rules.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but we had counter rules, meaning, once they did that, we'd say, okay, but if we do it and we get it out, then you should give us that. We did that. And at first, guys, there was some business people that didn't love that we were there, and they would tell us to our face. And there was one or two in particular that I made it my job to see them every day, go upstairs and talk to them and sit in their office and bullshit my ass off. And then eventually they were like my buddies. There was, as one of them told me, I don't even want to mention names, but he says, I wanted to hate you guys, but like 6 months in, I was rooting for you guys and I was like, that was my job. My job was to go in there and change your mind and about us. That would not, because everyone thought we were just trying to take the money and run.
Right. I mean, that's the fear is like, it's either I'm good. The fear is they're going to lose some sort of control in agency in their job,
Right,
or B, you're hurting the mothership in that respect if you're taking the money.
right.
Yeah.
Our number one rule was we're not allowed to hire anyone that currently works at Marvel.
Okay.
That was our number one rule. So we couldn't hire anyone
And that was
that
wait,
worked at
that was
Marvel.
it your rule or their rule?
That was their rule.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That makes sense.
So we couldn't touch any. So why do you think we went? We went to people that were, Christopher Priest, who was
Hmm.
working at DC, right? He was a Kevin Smith, who was a buddy that owed us a ton of favors, and then we're talking about, everything from Steve Dillon to Garth Ennis to Chris Golden and all these different people we worked for with Harris, and we worked for them in other companies. We knew them. Obviously, Garth and Steve were friends. I hired my high school buddy Mark Texera,
Yeah.
right? He's from my high school. He helped me break in doing background, so of course I had to return the favor, right? I will eternally be grateful to Mark. I,
Yeah.
I adore him. I love him, and for eternity, if he never has work, I will find work for him. And then so we hired people around us that we knew wanted to do the best comics they could, improve that these characters could be treated better.
Yeah.
That tone, I think, came through on the four titles, that we really was sitting serious about making these books the best we can, and we want to show everybody that because we love them so much, the characters, we're going to give them all the respect in the world. And that was our secret weapon. And we had some beautiful art, and everybody did their best work on these books.
I think so.
And when we came out with them, our plan, I said, if we're doing four titles, we want one to come out each week, every month.
Hmm.
My whole thinking was, I remember from oh my god, I'm thinking 70s, or might have been the 70s. There was a company that came out with comics called Atlas,
Yeah, sure.
and I remember like two or three came out every week for months, and I would buy every one because I would go to the store and I'd buy every new title, and I always remembered that. So I said, we do Marvel Knights, let's put them out. Joe and I said, let's put them out one a week, so no matter where you look on the rack, you'll see a brand new Marvel Knight book. And then we did computer coloring, so we made the covers look a little more intense.
Yep.
You look at the first Daredevil, you look at all the first issue covers, and they're all these beautiful, colorful, iconic kind of color covers.
Hmm.
Black Panther #1 by Tex, and Daredevil 1 by Joe and I, with swinging over the city, and the Inhumans at Jay Lee with the black background.
Yeah.
And even Punisher with Bernie Wrightson doing that painting on the cover. So these were all like, we were trying to show like, okay, these characters deserve a little better. We're gonna try. That's our angle. Our angle is we're gonna come in and we're gonna make them better. Again, it's the bravura of young guys thinking they could
Sure.
do that, right? Because not for a minute did we think we can't do this. We can do this. We can do
Yeah.
it better than anybody. And then of course reality would sit in once in a while and go. Joe and I would look at each other and run down a bar and get drunk because we were like, okay, let's not think about this too hard.
Right. So, I mean, you must have been working like all the time at that point because I mean, because you're running a machine and you
Yeah,
have to turn in pages to keep that machine going.
there was Joe Calamari was the president of Marvel Comics
Okay.
back then, and I would pull all nighters because I'd be inking a book to get it out the next day or whatever. And he told me I could use his shower. He had a shower in his office,
Yeah.
and I would bring a towel and a backpack with a change of clothing, and I would use the shower. And one day, this is a quick funny story. Ike Perlmutter. One day, I did an all nighter, took a shower. It was like 6:30 in the morning. I came out of the shower and I had my towel on, and I'm walking up to the third to go up to the stairs, and there's an older gentleman, and he looks at me. He goes, "Who are you?" Now I never met him before,
Right.
and I went, "Who am I?" I said, "Who the hell are you?" And then he tells me his name, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "So who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Joe Casado and I are doing Marvel Nights upstairs and everything." And he goes, "What are you doing walking around with a towel?" And I said, "Well, I said I had to. A book was due this morning, so I pulled an all nighter." And Joe let me use I took a shower to wake up, to wake myself up because I got to get the book out this morning. It can't miss shipping. And he just smiled from ear to ear and he goes, I like to hear that.
Nice.
And then he goes, have a good day. And I didn't see him till like years later again. But that was my meeting with him.
It seems like the most appropriate way to do it too. Yeah.
Well, I remember, when I first, one of the first times I started getting steady work at Marvel and Stan Lee was in the building. Someone said Stan Lee's here, just so you know. And I was
Mm.
like, oh my god, I've seen him at cons, but I never met him. And I was doing work. I think I was doing work for Bobby Chase and Don Daly at the time, and or Tom Brevoort. I might have been doing Deathlock, inking Deathlock. Anyway, I'm walking down the hall, and past the bullpen, all the way where Don Daly and Ralph Macchio were in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
corner, is Stan Lee, and he's walking towards me. And I'm all the way where like Tom DeFalco's office
Yep.
was, right? So you know how long that is.
It's a
That's a
long
long
walk.
path.
It's a half a block.
And I'm watching him, and he's walking towards me, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Stan Lee, and he's coming this way. And I'm like, what do I say? Like, hi, Stan, or introduce myself, and he walks right up to me. He goes, Jimmy Palmiotti, so nice to meet you. And he puts his hand out. He shakes my hand, and he goes, I hear you've been doing a lot of work here, kid. You're doing good work. Everybody's talking about you like that. And I'm exploding on the inside, right? Like, I have like Kirby cackle coming out of my brain.
Yeah.
And he's talking to me and everything. And then he goes, "All right, well, you keep up the good work." And he turned around and he walked away. And then he turned around again and he goes, "By the way," and he reaches into his pocket. He had his shirt on with a collared shirt on with a pocket. He pulls out a photo of me from Wizard magazine with my name under it, and he said, "The guys told me you would be here today, so I figured I'd take this photo so I could make sure I knew who you were when I saw you." Like that. And I was like, I was like, how cool is that? I
That's
was like, oh, okay. I was like, okay. And yeah, so that was my first like real meeting with Stan. He had a photo of me in his shirt pocket because he heard I was going to be up there and somebody gave him a cutout so he could identify me. That's when I knew I was like, okay, I think I'm in. Like, I think I'm
yeah,
in.
I think so.
I think I'm going to have steady work for a while. But and of course, I've seen Stan like a million times afterwards, right? Because I used to host a lot of his panels. So, but that first meeting definitely left a huge impression on me. Because I mean, to comic book people, that's like meeting. That's the most famous person in comics. It still is, by the
Yeah,
way,
sure.
the most famous person in comics. And for me, it was like, this is a guy. I read all his Sand soapboxes since I was like 12. So kind of, and then he came up, like I said, and said my name. I was like, what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a family. I had a loose familial connection with him when I met him the first time, and it was at the holiday party.
Oh yeah, those were great parties, boy.
And they're the
Yeah.
best. Like he remembered everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
he remembered. I named this guy who just was a he was a advertising buyer for print magazines. And like
Right.
Stan knew him. And he's like, "Oh my gosh." And
Yeah.
it was just so like he sat and talked with me for a few minutes just about like how did you know him? And like, yeah, he was the best. He really was the best.
Oh, he I remember, they had the X-Men the first X-Men movie premiere was on Ellis Island,
Mm.
okay? And they only invited the cast and the producers and the directors, all that kind of people, right? And then they had a separate boat come with press people. So they would watch the movie, and they shoved all the press people back on the boat after so the rest of the group anyway, remember Garib Sheamus said, "Hey, I have a plus one. Do you want to come with me to this?" And I'm like, "Yes." But at one point, I'm there, and I see Stan, and Stan comes up to me and he goes, "I'm hanging out with you. You know everybody here. You can tell me who." And he's pointing to people. Who's that? And I'm like, "Oh, that's Rebecca Romaine Stamos." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Very pretty. Who is that guy over there?" I'm like, "Well, that's Hugh Jackman. He plays the Wolverine. Right, right. That guy. That guy. And who is that?" And I'm like, "That's Halle Berry." And he goes, "Oh, she's very pretty." Like, I was like naming it because Stan was he wanted to make sure he knew everybody who everybody was. So he found me and was like picking my brain there, and it was so much fun because I was hanging out with Stanley at the X-Men premiere at one point and walking around with him, and I was like, "Yeah, this is surreal."
12-year-old Jimmy is not believing that one.
I will say, whatever I did in my last life, they're paying me back pretty good because it's like I find myself in those situations in my lifetime, and I'm always like, How did I?
Right.
How am I here? Like, how did I get here? And how did I get so lucky?" And I know it's hard work and everything, but man, it's sometimes stuff used to happen to me, and I used to be like, "What is going on?" But I also think part of that is leaving yourself open
Yeah.
to do things as well. I was not the guy that you would say, "Hey, I got this tickets for this. You want to do this tonight?" I was not the guy that goes, "Nah." I was the guy that's like, "Oh yeah, what time does it start?" I always, I kind of had that thing where early on, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but I always thought I only have a limited time on this planet. I better go do some stuff.
Hmm.
I've had that for my whole life. I still feel that way, and I don't know what that's from. I'm sure some therapy can tell me where that's from.
Sure.
But I've always been the guy that goes, "Yeah, that sounds messed up. Let's do it." And then you'd have a story from it. There'd be a story.
Right. That's like that's at the very least you'll get a story. Right.
It's very important to have some stories.
Yeah.
Okay, especially your own stories, even better,
Right.
because But it definitely was. It was a generation of no cell phones.
Hmm.
And cameras were a thing we didn't carry around. I would never take a camera to the premiere of X-Men. I just wouldn't. I mean, it probably collected everyone's cell phones anyway. I'm just saying, like, we didn't have that, so we would actually have to spend a lot of time talking to each other.
Yeah.
People had to people had to interact with each other, not online. It's where or this cowardly texting or not taking a phone call because they don't want to deal with stuff. I mean, it's definitely a generational thing. Like we actually like sitting with people for hours
Hmm.
in a bar having drinks and talking about stuff. Like it's one of my favorite things about conventions is the night of the con, sitting with all the pros and all of us telling war stories about the work we're doing. It's so much fun. I mean that to me is the best show we haven't seen yet. Is all that craziness,
Yeah.
but definitely a different generation thing. I guess there's a little more like I notice like everyone's treats everybody else like competition now.
Mm.
And I've always been in celebration mode of other people, meaning, look how great this guy's work is doing. Look how but I see it like I get this vibe of competition, which drives me a little nuts because I'm like, there's no artist is competing with another artist since styles are so different to me. Like there's no competition, right? Like
Yeah.
there's Amanda's work doesn't look like Neil Adams, and Neil Adams doesn't look like Darwin Cooks, and like I love the idea. Mike Kaluta doesn't look anything like Barry Smith. Yeah, I love the individual
Yeah.
artists. Look, I know comic fans like like different things, and I think we're seeing a lot coming back to a lot of different types of art being done in comics, and I'm really happy about that.
It's I mean we are in a really blessed time when it comes to the variety of artwork style because we
Yeah,
because the bulk of the comics are produced by a very small number of publishers for a long period. The
Right.
styles didn't range wildly because they couldn't
No.
afford it. Like the bottom line didn't say like, all right, next month everyone's going to do their Bill Sienkiewicz interpretation. Like it wouldn't. They'd lose money.
Yeah, I also think there's accepting the art, right? Now we're more accepting of the art. I remember I was at the Heroes Con and I saw Trad. I was introduced to Trad Moore and I was telling him how much I like his work, and I think he was a little surprised I even knew who he was on some level. But I was like, I'm like, dude, I love your stuff. It reminds me like Mobius, but more drugs involved. And he was just laughing at that. There's so many great different artists out there and styles and storytelling things. So it is a great time for comics. I just think at the same time, the comics has to tighten their waist a little bit with all these alternate covers and all that kind of
I
stuff. It needs,
it's a
no,
huge I mean, it's a danger that we saw play out and ruin the business in the 90s. We saw this
yeah,
whole sort
yeah,
of speculative multiple number one issues that were really it really killed the business from 95 to 98. Like it just killed
yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, it takes, well, every time you buy six covers of the same book, it means there's five books you're not reading,
Right.
right? And that for me that's the casualty of war. Of money war. And it's greed based, it's business based. I'll never fault creator own doing it because they got to do whatever they can to survive. I will fault a comic company, a big name comic company is doing 30 covers.
Yeah,
I
sure.
will fault that. We don't need that. It doesn't need to be done. We don't need any more cover artists, by the way, in the business. We got a billion of them. There's a billion of them.
There may be too many. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here. There
Right,
just may be
but
too
but
many.
but ask about the interiors. I had these two girls come from an art school, and they're both terrific artists. And I said, "Do you have any interior pages?" Like, "Oh, we don't do that." And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
"Does anybody do that?" And, because that's where really the tough guys and girls are doing interiors.
That's what a comic book artist is. Not the cover artist is a very fine
They're
illustrator.
illustrators.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're illustrators.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we don't see the covers reflect what's in the book so much anymore, and
Yeah.
that to me is a pet peeve. I don't really. I love when I can see a cover based on the inside of the book. I love that.
It's a unique talent because what you have to do is you have to get that script and you got to read the script and distill it into an image that is going to be
Right,
something that people are going to go like, wow, what's happening in here versus action image of generic proportion on the cover. Okay, it's a
right,
beautiful drawing, but I don't know if I'm really.
right.
It doesn't make me go, let's see what's happening inside.
No, I think the iconic covers you remember are all the covers that have some storytelling going on.
That's the
You know,
job.
Todd McFarlane, sure, he does the Spider-Man with all the webs and everything. That's his. But I love the issues after it has some great covers on it. And
Hmm.
but anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Whatever, blah
All
blah
right.
blah.
So where
You
did
know,
you get the temerity, oh, Mr. Inkerman, to
yeah,
put consecutive words together in a sentence with grammar to tell stories?
yes.
I mean, how dare you?
Mike Martz. Yeah, Mike Martz was the first guy to hire me at Marvel. Gave me a Deadpool story to do. Um, I pitched. I used to. So after reading a ton of scripts, because even as an inker, I wanted to see the scripts just to make sure I was doing the right thing on the page.
Hmm,
And after reading like 4,000 of them, I was like, I think I could do this, and I have ideas. Even with event, of course, we were doing our own ideas. It just didn't so it never occurred to me that it was something I shouldn't do.
okay.
Does that make sense?
No, no, no.
I I
Yeah.
I felt like I should do every job in comics. I mean, I color now because I love doing coloring. I feel like I should do every one except hand letter because I'm terrible at it. When I first started, I was drawing. I drew a bunch of books for Marvel, and I just felt like I should be writing stuff too. And I took it really serious it was the late 2000 and 7 or 8 where I got a job from DC to ink, and they needed me to fix a bunch of things on the job, and I put it back in the FedEx box and I sent it back to them with a note that said, "I am completely finished inking. I don't ink anymore. So if you have anything you want me to write, fine." Because I knew I had to stop doing one to do the other, and
Yeah.
and I got lucky. because Bob Harris was at Wildstorm. He gave me 2 books to do. Like, you know, me and Justin Gray, we did The Resistance and 21 Down, and then I went over to Marvel. They gave me Deadpool for a year, and I went to Dark Horse. I did some work there, and I just bounced around to anyone that would hire me, and everything was a challenge because I was like, okay, I would get nervous. I'm like, all right, this is a legacy character. What do I do that hasn't been done a million times and all that kind of stuff? I still get like that. I circle my stories.
Hmm.
Right now I'm working on a Daredevil Punisher book, and I'm circling issue 3 a little bit because I'm like I realize I've seen it before. So now how do I do it where it's more interesting to the person reading it? Like that kind of stuff. I circle it until I sit down and then type it out. But I think storytelling comes from a lot of reading, a lot of travel, a lot of life experiences, and which I have a ton of, and then putting yourself into the work. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to write 5 years of Harley Quinn,
Right.
right? Or who would know I would 125 issues of Jonah Hex,
Right.
a Western, you know. Um, but stories are stories, right? So you just change you change the place
The
and the time.
location, yeah,
Yeah,
the thing, but like, we were saying really early on that this is that, like, the root of the story is, they're universal, and
yeah,
you can apply the sort of the causality factors. Like, you can always be assured that the bad guy is going to cause the story. Like, you're okay.
yeah,
Like, they're gonna set the tone and dictate what's going to happen, and your hero's responsibility is to now deal with these conditions and overcome them, and hopefully set things in a better place than they were when we started the story.
right, right. And for me, I'm not the greatest traditional superhero writer. If you're gonna give me a character, like the current book I'm writing is Punisher verse. It's not Punisher verse Daredevil, but it's Punisher Daredevil,
Hmm.
and they're both arguing out the way they see the world, right? And Matt's trying to understand it, and Frank doesn't want to hear it. And it's interesting to write the 2 characters because I know what the editors want. The editors want them to be fighting and punching each other for whole books, right?
Sure.
But to get to that, there has to be a reason. They can't just randomly do willy nilly do that. They have to have some kind of goal they're trying to reach. I'm writing some moments where they're both sitting with each other and talking out their philosophy in the way that they would both speak. And for me, that's infinitely more interesting because they both think they're right, and we know they're both right on some level, and they're both wrong on some level.
Hmm.
And and what's I find interesting is what do you do? How do you where does your conversation go where the person talking to you is making extremely valid points, but it goes against everything you believe?
Yeah.
But you realize they're making really good points, and you're like, ah, ah, like that moment in Heat when De Niro and Pacino was sitting down having that conversation where they go, look, we we're a lot alike, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, I'll be the guy to put a bullet in you
Yeah.
if you do this. So it's like that kind of stuff that interests me more than the two of them hitting each other with 2x4s for 5 pages. I mean, that to me is like it's probably why Mark Waid is a much better superhero writer. Like my thing is like if I'm writing Superman, I start to dig into what frustrates him.
Hmm.
I'm more into. I want to psychologically take them apart. Like the Flash does not want to wait online to get a cheeseburger.
Right.
Like it's against everything in his brain. But I look at the heroes a little more grounded in a little different way, and it's probably why I'm better off with characters like Painkiller Jane or Jonah Hex or even the Punisher. I can relate to how he wants to take care out the bad guys.
Right.
But Daredevil at the same way looks at them as like these people can redeem themselves. They can change their ways. They can become a positive part of society if given the chance. So like these are themes that are I'm dealing with now with the book in front of me. But I find myself like laughing because I'm like, but they're both right. I'm like, oh my god, they're both right
Hmm.
for each of their lives. sure, if somebody killed my wife and kids, I'd want to kill them too. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. There's no, and if you're Daredevil, you're sitting there listening to that and going, yeah, he'll probably, that killer will probably never get out of jail. They'll spend their whole life in jail. What good are they to society at that point? But Matt has to see, because of his religious background,
Yep.
has to see that somebody always can be saved on some
Because
level.
his structure, his structure is that you have this Catholicism, and you also have this legal structure, and
Yes.
these two pieces play a huge role in his life, despite whatever sort of pathology that exists within him that
Yes.
forces him, that drives him to do the things that he does. And
Yeah.
Frank's story is a different story, but they both
Right.
have a sort of a parallel pathology. It's just a matter of how they execute this.
Right. And I'm not so sure them punching each other is more interesting than them talking to each other.
I agree.
Yeah. Because I mean, they're punching each other. I get it. They get pissed off and they punch it. It's going to have to be a third person that comes in and messes with them on some level to get them to attack each other. But I'm laughing when I'm writing it because I'm like going, God, I believe both arguments. This is so interesting for me to write.
But that's your job. Like
Right.
as a writer, your job is to is to be as on board with every single character you're putting on a page. And
Yes.
make their existence not there to support your protagonist's actions, but there to do a thing that they need to get done in life. And that's
Yes.
all it, like, Robin's job is to take, to do, yeah, sure, Batman, ostensibly, but wouldn't it be great if Robin wanted more agency within the situation? Hence, that's why we get I guess, a Nightwing as a result.
Right. Right. But anyway, back, the writing stuff I think just came naturally to me. I definitely sound a lot smarter on the page than I do speaking in real life. I'm well aware of my Brooklyn accent, and I come off a little rough. It's funny. I did an interview for New West magazine, which is like a Western magazine, and when Jonah Hex was out, and they interviewed me, and the guy got on the phone with me, and he thought he had the wrong number, and I'm like, what's the matter? And he goes, where are you from? And I'm like, from New York, Brooklyn, New York, and he's like, no. And I'm like, what's the matter? He goes, I read these. It feels like you lived out in the West. And I'm like, well, I said, I do love everything Western. I did go to a ranch and I did learn how to horse ride to do the book. I went a little nuts to do it. I said, but I said, it's been like, to me, it's like a fantasy. Like a Western's a fantasy to me because I live in this cement jungle where nobody's on a horse except a cop in the park.
Right.
And open plains means a parking lot of a store that's closed on Sundays. That's an open plain to me. So it was so funny because he was so disappointed that I was not from Wyoming or something, and I just told him, I said, well, it's part of the imagination. I said I still love Western just as much as you do. I just don't live there.
I mean, they're magic. The great thing about the Western is, like, you get Westerns like, Winchester 73 or Bad Day at Black Rock. These things that just, like,
Right,
these stories that they just live in you forever when you watch them. But then you can look at, like, the Magnificent Seven and realize, like, that's a recontextualization of Kurosawa's film. So at that
right,
point,
right,
that's license for you as a person who has to write a lot of Western tales.
right.
You can now say, like, I'm going to reinterpret Hamlet through the lens of Jonah
Oh yeah,
Hex.
sure. Absolutely. When Justin and I were doing it, we laughed because we did the first 70 issues, and then we did All Star Western, which was like 38 issues after that. And we were laughing because we hardly ever had a story where Jonah Hex took a wanted poster and say, "I'm going to get this guy," and do that. We never did that. We always had all these crazy stories. And I realized by the time we got to 70, I said, I think we only did that once,
Yeah.
where he was going after a guy. And it's funny because I write the Gunslinger, the Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger for Todd. The book is so completely different from his Gunslinger book. It's like night and day.
Right.
Like I am writing like this really grounded Western. And Todd said, do what you do best. He wants me to stay on the book for a while. So he's like, do what you do best, build up the world he's in. And I said, oh, I am. I said, but it's going to go at a different pace in your book because he has a modern book. He has the Gunslinger in present day, and it's very modern. It's quick and it's bold and it's big. Mine, it's like, 2 pages of him on horseback eyeballing something, and then we see it later on come back into the story what he was looking at. And it's like a whole different pace. And and I love that he's letting me do that. I know at first he was shaking his head a little bit. I know because he would call me and we talk about stuff. And I said, just let it. I said he's going to find his own footing. This is when he first becomes gunslinger. Yours is he's been gunslinger for years.
Hmm.
Mine is this is the guy that's finding out how screwed his life is,
Right.
and it's slowly creeping into his guts. And you know, stuff like that keeps it challenging. And then doing my own books keeps it challenging for me. And I think as I get older, with all this stuff, I have less interest in certain things, and I have a lot more in creating my own things. So it's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the human qualities become much more interesting than the inhuman qualities that, that maybe excited us when we were much younger.
Yeah, I mean, a guy shooting flames from his hand. Superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Superpowers. I mean, you have to be really clever. I mean, because just like the Fantastic Four movie that just came out, it's like the thing is a big, strong rock. One a guy can fly and he has flames. Invisible Girl just shoots invisible powers, and then Reed stretches.
Right.
We've seen these powers in a million things. The Boys makes fun of them. The Boys. We skewered them years before the Boys in the Pro. We make
Hmm.
fun of them in the Pro. So that kind of stuff only goes so far. So the basic thing is, you have to care about the character. If we make you care about the character, you'll keep coming back.
Yeah.
And that's what Amanda and I learned in Harley Quinn. Because we kind of rewrote who she was. We put her back in Brooklyn. We gave her a supporting cast, and we had 100 and something issues in a row. A story that continued. Those were not separate issues. They were one giant story. And as it was pointed out to me, he's like, yeah, people, you created a world, and they keep wanting to visit that world because you gave them the personality, and
Hmm.
you gave her a supporting cast where usually she's the supporting cast. And that was a one thing when Amanda and I took the character on. We said, we have to give her a supporting cast, otherwise she's a secondary Batman character.
Yeah.
And we got enough of those. We got enough of those. I just feel Batman is so tired. Like I know it's like the best selling book and everything, but I feel like I've read every story of Batman I ever need to read. And unless you pull out a really good Bruce Wayne story, I might be in for it. I did pitch a Bruce Wayne series, and they didn't go for it.
It seems to me that that's just money on the table. I mean, I think you could
Yeah,
probably, but what do we know?
I, I think DC is like less and less in the Jimmy Palmiotti business. I think they got what they got out of me, and that's okay. That happens. New crews come in and they hire their friends and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. I'm happy to be doing some work for Marvel, though. I'm enjoying that, and then working with guys like Mad Cave and Nikki at Dynamite doing a Harley Elvira thing is hysterical.
That's cool.
Um, you know, yeah, I have like weird gigs right now, and they're all fun. So that
I'm
counts.
super pumped with Mad Cave because I think they've got some
Yeah.
good heart, behind that whole thing, and I'm hoping that just they can build and build, and they're gonna be around.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought they'd be able to sell the Pop Kill book the way they did.
Hmm.
And then, we had a first issue that was I think it was a 5.95 book or something. It did 55,000 copies,
Amazing.
the first issue. That's like big numbers for them,
Yeah.
for anybody. I mean, anybody right now. So I'm really encouraged. I mean, the guys running it, they're just sweethearts, and I'm doing more work for them. I'm in San Diego. I got to know the owner and and I already knew the editor in
Mark.
chief and everything. Yeah, Mark London. He's a great
Yep.
guy. Just what a great guy. Him and his wife, they're terrific people, and he just loves comics, man.
Hmm.
You meet somebody, you can tell right. I'm a good person. I meet somebody, I get it right away. He's A+ guy. He loves his comics, man.
Yeah,
I love that.
I totally get that. So paper films, like this is, so you kind of did a thing. I know you little
Yeah,
little hat
I have my
tip
hat
there,
on.
but
You can't tell I have my hat on,
he's
but yeah,
Jimmy's wearing a hat with a logo of his own company on there.
yes,
He's a
yes.
shill for himself.
In case I get Alzheimer's and walk in the streets, people can go, "Oh."
Oh,
Let's
oh,
look that up
let's
online.
take you back home, young man.
Take them back home.
So that, I mean, so this feels like a sort of an extension of everything that we've talked about to this point. Being able to tell
Mhm.
stories the way you want to tell them,
Yes.
having some agency of the thing for the things that you want to make, by
Right.
ownership. That what if we get to keep 85% of the royalty? Like, this kind of thinking leads to something, but it's not just you and Amanda just making your own comic books. You've got, you have a team. You've put some, you've got some amazing talent that just you have like on your roster, and that's kind of, it's a very different vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it's so most of the paper film stuff, not all of it, because I have a Kickstarter starts like in a week
Hmm.
or so, and that's an all ages thing called Deep Sea. But most of my stuff leans towards adult because we don't really see that too much in comics these days. And I'm a heavy metal kid. I grew up on heavy metal, so I
Hmm.
love that kind of stuff. But paper films was a couple of things, right? I needed to be incorporated because Amanda and I work for our company, so we work on the salary for our own company. When you get to the point in your life where you have to do tax things, you'll understand why that happens. And then publishing just under our thing, we I've done over 25 Kickstarters, funding our own books, and it's the most unaggressive publishing company ever. Meaning, I put out a couple of things a year and that's it, and I'm happy with that. I I don't have the money, the time, or the bandwidth to really start my own big company. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like everyone's like, why don't you just do a big company and hire put out all these books? And I'm just like, oh my god, I'm like, I'm like, I want some time for my life, please. Those days, those days, I'm like, I turned down the big jobs for a reason because I
Yeah.
wanted to create my own stuff. So I don't want to do that. So Paper Films is a company that I put out books, and we put out stuff at our own speed. Whenever Amanda and I can get to it, whenever I can get my crew, is Patrick Weds, Justin, is Dave Johnson, all my buddies work for me. I call in favors. I pay everybody more than everybody else. How I hire people is I tell them how much you want to get paid. That's what I ask them,
There you go.
and then I negotiate. Then I say, all right, that's unrealistic. But I do pay more than most of the big companies when I pay my guys. I pay my guys better because I have to see them every day and live with it.
Hmm.
And I want to make sure I know they have kids and families and stuff, so it's okay. I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. Yeah, it's a small company, but if you go to paperfilms.com, you can see what we've been putting out for years. And I constantly put out Painkiller Jane books every year. As a matter of fact, 2026 is the 30th anniversary of Jane, so I have like 4 or 5 books that I'm gonna be putting out
Oh,
next
wow.
year on Jane. I'm already working on them, so I have 2 of them done. I got 3 more to go. And I work on that stuff.
Talk about the person
Yeah.
who has to draw all those things. They've got to work.
I don't have so the 2 that are done are all drawn,
Yeah.
and the 3 that are done aren't started yet.
Okay.
So I have to find the right artist, so I kind of hold out,
Yeah.
for certain people. I don't settle on artists. There's a lot of artists out there I like, and I ask them if they can do it, and they tell me I need like 6 months, and I'm like, I'll wait. That's the good news about that is that I can be patient with other people's schedules, and then I'm lucky to get some covers by big names once in a while. Guys like Sean Murphy and Dave Johnson and Dan
Hmm.
Panosian, and all these guys are so generous with their time with me that they're able to do that. And Adam Hughes, another one that when they work for me, I pay them best I can, and I say you can make prints, you can make posters, I don't care. Go make money with the piece you did.
Yeah.
I'm like, nothing makes me happier than them being successful.
No, they're, yeah, and plus Dave and Adam, like those guys are all generational talents. Like they're these
Yeah,
people who you just go, and like okay, fine. Dan's an also generational talent, but in a different way.
yeah,
But like, but you're working with Dan right now, right? On a
yeah. We have a Marvel Knights Punisher 4-issue series that Dan is did the covers already. He's penciling, inking, and coloring the books.
Jeez.
And I have 3 of them on my desktop that they're just amazing. He's working on issue 4. They're beautiful. I think they come out. I think the first one comes out
Is it
October,
October?
September or
September,
October.
October. Yeah,
Yeah, I
somewhere in
think
there.
it's October. Yeah, I gotta check my calendar. I think it's October, but it's a really heavy duty Frank Castle Punisher book. It's I take him in places he's never been. I mess with him, and he destroys the landscape in the process. I like to say it's a very Diesel thing, and I wrote it for Dan.
Yeah,
So I knew Dan was going to draw it. We went over what he wants to draw, and then we formed the story on that because he loves the big muscle, the kind of
sure.
the punishment, and sweat is coming off, and bullets are flying, and I'm like, oh, I could do that. I got an idea for that, and I think when the first issue comes out, there's going to be a lot of people talking about it. It might be good, it might be bad.
Nah,
Either way,
dude.
it's going to be talked.
I mean, we've both known Dan for a long time, and to see
Yeah,
Where Dan has put himself in the second act of comic bookdom, it's unbelievable.
yeah. He's a machine. He's got a lot of Ghost of Mort Drugger in him, which I love. If you look at Mort Drugger's work and then you look at Dan's, it's he's hungrier now than I've ever seen him in his career. He's got something to prove. He's writing more and he's drawing more. And he does a cover every 2 days, it seems.
Hmm.
I'm on his text thread, so he sends me the latest all the time, and he's constantly. I think was it Jack Kirby or somebody, one of the guys in this past said it's not great for artists to have more time. It's
Mm.
great for them to be under pressure and keep doing work because when you start doing a lot of work really fast, you get better really fast,
Yep.
and you start picking up. And look, I'm a guy that loved Barry Smith, Red Nails, and it probably took him a year and a half to do, and it will be forever a classic comic. But I get it. Like I get when Kirby was doing it, he was knocking out 2, 3 books a month,
Yeah.
and it had this energy to it that was
Hmm.
just like, you can't even nobody can replicate it. You
No.
know, nobody can do the weird drawings that Jack Kirby did. They were weird. They were off. The hands were weird. The arms were crazy. The women looked like whatever. It didn't matter. It was all Kirby, and it was all fun. It was pure energy.
He created a language, a visual language with, in
Yes.
his style. So you are getting this, this cuneiform, this the shorthand of what reality is through Jack's pencil on the page.
Oh
So
yeah.
it all fits. And I think what you're saying about I can evolve the idea of the pressure thing is that it doesn't allow you to second guess yourself. It doesn't allow you to
Yes.
overthink anything. You only can do. And if you're in a position of just doing, it's almost like it's like that samurai mythology, like, you're in the moment. There's only that one place to be. You can't sit
Right.
and think about, do I have to do laundry tomorrow? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow because the guy's standing there with a sword ready to chop me in half.
Right. Right. You have to feed. You have to have someone feed these artists. I know when Amanda's in a work zone, I have to like say, "Hey, babe, it's dinner time." Oh, I didn't even eat lunch yet. Like they're
Right.
just in this other zone. I remember Darwin Cook. I used to when Darwin was doing the Parker books. He lived like right down the block from me. We'd go grab lunch, and I'd say, "What'd you work on?" He goes, "Yeah, I got like 10 pages of Parker done yesterday." And I'd be like 10, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I'm in the zone, man. I'm in the zone. I didn't go to sleep. I'm in the zone." And that's how he did it. He put it down. New Frontier, same thing, man. He'd go in there. He'd do pencil rust, but then when he was ready to go, he would go. And
Wow.
I wouldn't see him for a week or two. And then all of a sudden he'd have this stack of pages, and then he would be burned out for a month or
Right.
two. Like he would just not work. It would,
Just,
you know, he would just be like, "I'm done for a while. Let's go get some chicken and let's go get a drink and let's go see a movie." Did not want to look at the work again because he was like, I got it done. So everybody's got these different styles, and I think, like I said, in the long run, deadlines are probably the best friend and the
mhm.
enemy for all artists. But I think it's the best friend because if we told somebody, "Hey, you got 3 weeks to do that cover," it ain't going to be better than if they had to get it in 3 days.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be. I think it'll be over thought out and overworked,
Yeah.
and
There could be a lot of false starts sitting in a pile somewhere in that
yeah.
studio.
I mean, it's a look. I think Kirby's work is sort of like in a way modern art. like a Andy Warhol or
Hmm.
somebody very modern. Like nobody looks like Kirby. He did this. Oh, you're right. He did it. Have his own language. I think his art is like is so special. We see it happening with Frazetta, right? All the Frazetta paintings are going
Yep.
for millions now. We see what's happening is fine art is being replaced. We grew up. People go, you have to respect Van Gogh and Picasso and their journey and this and that. But we grew up in a place where the movie posters for James Bond movies were hanging up on our walls, or we had a Fazetta, poster on our van or
Hmm.
in our room. These were the masters to us, right?
Yeah.
This stuff. So I think why comic book art is so expensive, and it's going to get higher. By the way, folks, it's just going to keep going higher. Is because the classics, the what we were trained to think the classics, they're not as relatable to us as the things we grew up with. I was laughing at somebody because we were looking at this. You'll understand, Alex. You'll get this. Half of the audience probably won't get this. In the comics, they used to have these things. It was sea monkeys
I knew
ads,
you were going to say sea monkeys.
right? And it had the sea monkey mom and dad and the
Yeah.
kids in this alien landscape. And I was talking to someone, and I said, that artwork. Like, how cool would it be to have that
Oh
artwork
my God.
for that ad?
It would be
Like if
huge.
somebody walks in your house and they're like, "There's no way that's the actual sea monkey ad," and I'm like, "Yes, that's the sea monkey, right?" So, what's the worth of something like that,
Yeah.
right? Because it's something all of that hit all of our childhoods at one
Uh huh.
point. So why isn't that price as high as fine art in a way? Because it's something that influenced our lives. It was in our lives. Whether
Yeah.
it influenced it or not, that's another thing. Um,
Didn't you post some
you know,
like Bob Peak like TV guide pieces every so often?
yes,
And like those
yep,
things were in our houses every week. Like one of the greatest 20th century illustrators just on the
yes.
TV guide that you threw at your siblings, if they bothered you.
I had the Madonna. Amanda bought it for me years ago. The Madonna TV guide one with the red
Hmm.
of Madonna. It's a beautiful TV guide cover. It's the size of the wall back here,
Oh,
but the
really?
TV guide was only this big. Yeah, it's gigantic. It's
Oh,
gigantic,
wow.
right? Bob worked it's huge. But to me, that's like Americana. That's just as good as fine art as anything else I've seen. Or the Robert McGinnis Bond
Yes.
paintings of art.
Yeah.
They're or the paperback covers. That is why I think comic art is going up in price so much, is because people are buying. You saw what the Secret Wars cover went for, and with it, because there's millions of people that this was art in their life that
Hmm.
meant something. So of course they want to own it, you
Yeah.
know. And it was never, you know. I think I'm seeing galleries going out of business. And I tell them all, you should be posting up comic art because you'll
Yeah.
have people coming in all day long to look at stuff, and they'll want to buy. And I know this for a fact. Once you buy a page of comic art, you want another one.
Yeah. No, it's because you know why? Because they come with the number, Jimmy, and there's a number that precedes that page and another that follows that page. Like so, hey, I could have all these pages.
Alex, I know this is only not video and voice. I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
artwork. I have artwork next to me, and I have it all the time because I use it for inspiration, and and then there's some, and I'm going to hold up something although it means nothing to anybody
Oh yeah.
that
Okay. Wait, that's not the original, is it? Please don't.
it's It's so this was never used as a book in the books, right?
Okay.
But it's an original by Bill. Yes,
Oh
it's an
my God. Okay,
original
so there's
paint.
it's a Bill Sienkiewicz Electra done during the I guess for the run that he no, jeez. Okay. So
Yeah, done is in I don't know what year, but it was done
it's like
back
80,
then. But
86.
but I mean, like I have that all around. I have a lot of art
Well,
here. I have
there's a painting right behind you just leaning up against your bookshelf. Archie. Yep.
Archie art. Yeah, there's a behind me is a that's a Phil Noto painting.
Okay. Phil is one of the brilliant users of white. That guy uses white
Yeah,
better than anyone else. Phil Noto's so good.
that was a housewarming present when I
No.
got my place. But anyway, Anyway, I think this is the. I actually took it down. I have to move it. That's
Okay.
why it's right there. I have to move it. But yeah, I think that I think that's the next wave of collectible is the original art. I just think you know
Yeah, I mean it's pop culture, it's artwork, and it's also the more people do things digitally, the less of that stuff exists. So the
it's
value
true.
just only gets higher because, you know,
Yeah. Oh, I get these catalogs, these heritage
of the
catalogs,
heritage,
like
yeah.
every month, and I bid on stuff. I don't win, but I bid.
Hey, you know what? Maybe somebody makes a mistake and you end up winning because of your bid.
I did. I got a painting in my living room that nobody bid on, and I won it, and then I feel like I got like I feel like I got away with something. Like every time I look at it,
It's a very classy robbery. You pull the
it
heist.
is. It was. I still paid for it, but I definitely didn't. I paid like 1/8 of what it was worth, and
Wow.
I was so happy to get it. How I bid on Heritage is I put in whatever I think it's worth, and then I check it the day after the auction, and I'm like, nope, 1-0.
Right.
I put in what I can afford.
Right. I mean, listen, it's like playing the horses. You're just that's your version of playing the horses.
It's a rare thing. I want a little Annie Fanny story
Oh, cool.
off Heritage, and because it's Harvey Kurtzman, Bill Elder. I loved that stuff when I was a kid. I won a story. I just because somebody else didn't bid, that's why I won it. Somebody said, "Oh, it's too much for me," but I put in the price I wanted it to
Hmm.
be, and then it wasn't until like 3 or 4 days later I checked and I saw that I won. And I was like, "What?"
That's so cool.
And that was the price I wanted. That was I said, "That's the most I'm going to pay for this." And that's the bid I put in. So I got lucky. But most of the time, I just go to artists at the cons and I buy pages from them.
Well,
That
that's straight from the
yeah.
source.
Yeah, or I have somebody buy it for me, so
Right.
because the artist always try to give it to me for free, so I'm
Yeah.
like, ah,
Gotta get the cash across. So
yeah.
what's your writing like? What do you do? How do you do your practice writing? Like, do you try to be regular? Are you really good at just writing on the plane now and as you're like in hotels?
No, I'm terrible at that, but I come up with ideas in those places. So
Hmm.
I'll be like, oh, I have an idea. Like I write down little notes or I email myself ideas. Like I'll be flying and I'll be like, oh, that's a good part of the story. Let me email that to myself, and then I throw it on my idea sheet for the book.
Okay.
But I circle it like the book I'm doing now. I'm circling how I want it to pace out because editorial says you have to have 1 or 2 pages that are splashes with them fighting, and I'm like, okay, so I have to make them fight. So I have to put that in there somehow. Like, what are they going to be fighting about? I have to kind of work that way.
Right.
Or if I have an idea, like my own books that I'm doing, I put the idea down on like a sheet with all the ideas, and I try to put it in sequence. And then I think, and I sit there and go, okay, so I'm seeing this from the librarian's point of view, and I'm talking to this girl, and she's new to this town. How much out of the way am I going to go to try to speak to her? Am I an extrovert or am I just being polite? And where is my line with the politeness? Meaning, do I say, hey, let me help you more? So I'm like looking at the interact, and then I say, well, what does the story need? Well, the story
Mm.
needs to get from A to B, right? But what's going to be different about getting to A to B, where it's going to be this person that got in the way is going to bring me to B quicker because of something they do or say, so I look at it, I see it like it's a story unfolding, like a film in front of me. I
Hmm.
see it like I write the dialogue, I hear it, I hear them speaking, and then I go back and when I'm done and I edit the shit out of everything. I
Yeah.
sit there and go, is there a better way to say this? Is there a clearer way to say this? Is there a more subversive way to present this? Or is there a way to write this that I'm not giving away what that character is really thinking yet? But by the end of the book, if I go back and read it again, I'm gonna laugh because they literally said what was going on in this panel and nobody was listening to them.
Right.
I have that a lot. Like I'll go back and I've done a lot of books where the first line in the book is the last line in the book
Hmm.
because it's the character's journey, right? Knowing when I get to the end, I go backwards and saying, all right. this character might have had a little more might should be a little more anxious in their dialogue because there's more at stake for them.
Hmm.
So they wouldn't be pondering so much. They would be getting it out real quick because they're anxious.
Yeah.
So how do I get this cross that they're anxious without the other person noticing it? Like,
Yep.
and then we cut the dialogue, so we look at the dialogue in a different way. Now, when Quentin Tarantino writes a script, he writes it like 150 times. Okay,
Hmm.
he has the luxury of having it for a year or two. Once Upon a Time in America, I think he wrote over a long period of time because he kept going back and saying, "All right, that scene. What's a better way? What's a tighter way of saying that?
Hmm.
How would I really say?" That's great. Comics need deadlines, and that's great because we don't have that much time to go. We have to push through it,
Yeah.
And once in a while, you'll have something that you love what you write, and then they give it to an artist that does not capture it at all. You give it to an artist that the artist that drops the ball is not having the characters make eye contact. It doesn't look like I had one book I just did where I said the girl is upset and she starts berating this person. And the artwork I got back was like somebody dropped an anvil on her foot. She was screaming.
Mm.
And I'm like, upset is not screaming. Like upset is you can get upset. I can be upset without going, ah,
Yeah.
The artist made it screaming, and I said, can you please change that back to like she's not an anvil didn't drop on her foot. She's not nobody murdered her cat in front of her. And sometimes you don't get to correct that. So they tell you, well, the book has to go out. So if you can change the dialogue, if not, or hey, we don't have time for you to change the dialogue, but we'll make sure your corrections get into the next book. That happens too. So a lot of times, when you work with somebody that's new or you're not familiar with, you get those kind of things. If I work with Amanda, it's perfect.
Hmm.
She knows exactly what I'm saying. And when I worked with Darwin, he made it better. Like
Yeah.
Amanda and Darwin made it better. Dan Panosian made mine more diesel, more tougher. The Punisher's more tough. Like visually, I was laughing out loud how crazy it was, and I was like, yes, 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 that's what I want. So you get something different with everybody. When there's a language gap, which I have on 2 books I'm doing, sometimes I have to rewrite things
Okay.
to match the art. Sometimes I have to beg them. When I say it's a bar, by a dock, and I get a bar in a hotel,
Hmm.
I have to say, can you redraw that? It's by a dock. It's like a rundown 1-story bar with a roof, and I get a 6-story hotel with a bar on the bottom. I'm like, yeah, that's not. It changes the story. But it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a huge,
Yeah,
and it's a very modern challenge. I think of the current world of comics. So.
yeah, yeah. I only had one artist that I did a Batman story for, and he just would not. He didn't follow the script, and then he would not change it,
Mm.
and then he made the editor get involved. And the editor took his side and said, "Well,
Wow.
you can rewrite it." And I said, "Well, I Batman doesn't ring people's doorbells. That was my argument.
Yeah.
He doesn't ring people's doorbells and ask if they're home. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't do that. Comes in through your window. He waits till you're outside. You're on the roof. He's all of a sudden there. He does not ring a doorbell and then, hi, I'm Batman.
Right.
So sometimes that happens. I had this one artist. Like I said, he's a great artist, but he just didn't want to. Whatever, he didn't have time, or he just didn't think it was important, and that happens too. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
listen, like I think, as we said earlier, there's a lot of personalities that are that circle
yeah,
in this industry, and not everyone is going to be like everyone loves comics by and large. I would say 95+% love comics, but personalities are
right.
personalities.
Yeah, and I roll with it. Nothing's the end of the world.
Yeah,
Here's the thing in comics: people remember your successes. Your failures, they don't really. They don't. They just
I coined the term the other day is that you remember every ball you dropped. Like
oh,
that's it. That's how it goes. You don't remember the balls other people drop. You're just like, okay, keep going. Got to get to the end.
the worst is when you're a writer and you write this great story and it comes out terrible in the comic, and then for the next 20 years, people bring it to you to sign, and you have to keep looking at it, and you go, oh, not that one.
Oh,
And then they go, I really love that story. And I'm just like, I am so glad you loved it. But oh my God, If I never saw that book again, it'd
I
be
would
too
be,
soon.
you've made my life. So I'm going to say one thing about, like, you were talking about circling the story. And I think this is,
Yeah.
and I just on a craft level, I think it's an important thing for people to understand that you have to find the ways that you can work your way through the hardships. I mean, when you're drawing a story, the answer is typically right there in the script. Just follow the script, you'll be able to
Right.
get to the end.
Right.
But when you're cutting it from whole cloth, it becomes a very different challenge. And one thing that I found that has worked for me when it comes to writing just this year, and I
Hmm.
feel like an idiot for not even thinking of it sooner, is that I sit down with a pen or a pencil and a pad of paper, and I just start writing about the story. And it's
Yeah.
like sketching. So I'm sketching with a pen, with a pen or a pencil about my story, but I'm not drawing. I'm just writing. There you go.
I constantly. Yeah.
That unlocks all these kind of elements that you're trying, like, because you can get into themes, you can get into like motivations, you can get all these elements that aren't going into the script or on the on the page of the novel. These are the things that are making up the story. So, like you were saying, you're capturing notes. Like, do you find there are locations, places, efforts, and things you do that help you loosen those ideas out?
Oh yeah. Well, environment is a big deal, right? So when I'm writing a story in New York, I'm thinking about the neighborhood it's in. I'm thinking
Hmm.
about the streets. They tell me Hell's Kitchen. I remember 49th Street between 10th and 11th, and I'm like, I remember how those apartments are. I know what's over there. So when I wrote Coney Island in Harley, it was a character for me. I knew where Nathan's was here. This is where the roller coaster was. That's where the aquarium was. That's Brighton Beach. That's Manhattan Beach, and then that Sheepshead Bay. Like I was very conscious of the place, right? And that's why I say like travel is very important for a writer. Is to travel everywhere because once you get a grasp of the environment has a lot to do with the way people act and the way they do things. And in Harley, I used to have Harley go on the roof of her building and look down at all the lights in Coney Island, and that would make her feel good. Like there was an energy coming from that. And night in Coney Island, there is an energy there. Like
Yeah.
whether you want to be there or not, you and the beach, the ocean. You don't see the ocean. All you see is the white surf that comes up at
Mm.
night. You don't. It's all black on black unless there's stars. But that one surf comes up, those little white lines come out of the gray,
Yep.
and it's like so visually these things are part of the character, part of the landscape, and they can help you define how the characters act.
Yeah.
And it's also how like writing Daredevil, like you can get into the church part of him, right?
Hmm.
But I've read so much about that, I'm trying to stay away from that a little bit. And they realize he's in an office, right? And Foggy's in the office next door. Like this, to get in his office, he has to pass Foggy and the receptionist. So at some point, these characters are part of the story, right? These little things like that, knowing where everything is, because we do see it in our heads, whether you draw it or not. I remember Amanda was working on Silk Spectre, and she mapped out the drawings that Dave Gibbons did of her house, of the Silk Spectre's house, in
Hmm.
a couple of panels, and she mapped out the whole house. So she knew what the second floor was and the first floor was, and how it worked outside. And Dave Gibbons went up to Amanda and says, "You know what? You really took my artwork like and then dissected it." And she's like, "Well, I wanted to figure out the house, so I know when she goes out the window where she's going. Like, how is she getting off that roof?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I caught it. It was incredible."
That's
Like Dave
great.
just complimented it. So that's important. How your characters think in the moment is important. What would your character say or do or not say is really important, right? This is comic books, so the characters should look at the audience once in a while. It doesn't mean it's breaking a fourth wall. It just means your characters should look at the audience once in a while when they're trying to figure out something. It's very important to have that. A lot of comics I read, they never look at us,
Oh, I like
and I
that.
feel detached. I feel detached from the comic, so it's a really weird thing. When they look at us, I feel like, all right, he's looking at me and he's telling me I'm part of the story now.
Yeah.
I'm more involved because he's looking at me. You'll see that in the Kirby books. They'll have the characters looking right at you, and
Hmm.
so it's like all these things that take consideration. But at the end of the day, you're saying in your head, I have 20 pages. I have to make this issue stand alone. That is impactful. That if they paid $5 for this, they're gonna get a full story. Yet it's part 3 or part 4. What is it about that makes this special? Where's the fight? Where's the splash? What's the reveal? Or why is this cool? Like, why do I want to read this?
Yeah.
Right? And all these things, they're all there in the brain, but they're not all on the page. You can come up. I'll like come up. I'll dream some idea, and then I'll put it down on my script, and then I'll see it, and I'll go, "Oh yeah, I remember that," but that doesn't really work here. Oh well, I'll use that somewhere else. It's like I pictured, I picture the things happening. So windows are very important to me. What's outside the windows? What does the room look like? If somebody's in a diner, people reacting to things in a diner. If
Hmm.
people are if they're in a lawyer's office, there's going to be a secretary eventually there, and you look at all these weird things, right? Streets have cars and people on them,
Yeah.
and you get artwork sometimes, and there's no street lights, there's no cars, and I'm like, can you put some people there? I need some people. I need to know this place is inhabited.
Yep.
It looks like, and that's you get that in the art sometimes. You're like,
Yep.
oh, I need, you know, it's so involved.
It is. It's a very complex mechanism putting a story
Yeah,
together. It's not just a plot. And I think, where
no,
we the worst comics we have are the ones that are just a plot. And the best
yeah,
comics we have take us into the experience of the characters to the point where you are immersed at a level that you didn't expect it to be.
right. I never want you to sit there and get out of the story. Like I
Yeah.
want you to read it through. I don't want you. Like I used to say, if you're staring there looking at the art, that's great. But Steve Dillon used to tell me, it's Jimmy. It's the word balloon has a little arrow and it points to the head. So make sure the head's drawn really well
Yeah. Very
because
good.
it points to the head. That word balloon points to the head.
That's probably like 80% of the job right there. Just do a good head.
Right, but it was what a basic thing to say.
But no, it's totally true.
He's like, if your background sucks, it doesn't matter as long as the head looks great. He
Yeah.
says, you draw a great head. They don't care what that tree looks like or that building because they know it's a building. Look, there's a building. There it is. You
It's
know.
a fair point.
Well, if you think about Steve Dillon's art, it's all about that, right? It's all about the character.
Yeah, it's all about the characters. I mean, he is there's a lot of face acting, There's a lot of
Yeah,
face acting. Yeah.
never boring. This
No,
stuff's never boring.
like Kevin McGuire. Kevin McGuire, very much a face actor, artist. Yeah.
Kevin's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing at that. What do Kevin's buildings look like? I don't know. I don't care.
Buildings, I
You know.
guess.
No, but his characters have so much expression. That's all. I could see their soul.
Yeah, you remember all of that stuff.
Right. And that's why when we look at 100 X-Men comics, unless we're seeing into the soul of the characters, they have no impact on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But John Byrne, did you when you saw
Yep.
Wolverine looking at Psylocke and looking at,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever was going on, it had the characters were looking at us and all of a sudden you stopped everything
Hmm.
and read those comics. But I can't tell you how many X-Men after that. I look at them and I'm like, it's a big blur.
Yeah. A couple sunny spots here and there.
Sure. Sure.
All right. I don't want to, not be a good host here, but just pitch what people can expect to see from you.
Okay. All right, so we have every month I have coming out from Todd McFarlane and Image is the Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger. This is the Gunslinger set in like the 1860s, late 1860s, early 70s. It's a pure western with a little fantasy, horror, and a little bit of the Spawn universe involved. That's a monthly book. I have the Punisher Marvel Knights 4-issue The World to Come series with Dan Panosian. That's 4 beautiful books, oversized books. They're 25 pages each. And that starts in October. In November, I have it's Daredevil Punisher. It's a it's a story about the two of them that takes place when the first time Daredevil and Punisher met up in the Marvel Knights book in Punisher 2 with Steve Dillon and Garth Ennis. They had a brawl. This book takes place the day after the brawl.
Oh no, oh, that's great.
Yeah. So this is 5 issues covering a lot of that history there, and it has everything to do with the Maganucci storyline that we set up, and there's that, and then I have the Harley Quinn Elvira book that comes out October 1st, and that's 6 issues, written by Amanda and I, and Amanda did some artwork in it as well. It's with Juan Samu and her work on the book. The interiors, it's 6 issues of Elvira and Harley getting in trouble all over the DC and all over the Dynamite universe. It's really a crazy book. I will say that Elvira herself, Cassandra Peterson, does go in and tweak her lines in the
Oh,
book,
cool.
which is yeah, it's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
So that's it, and then I have a Kickstarter next week called Deep Sea, which is about takes place in the early '60s, and 5 divers are going into the deepest part of the world to dive. They created this machinery, and one of them gets hurt before they go and can't make it, and the other 4 divers go in, and the ship gets lost.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't come back up. The story takes place 40 years later.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a romantic sci-fi adventure.
All right. That sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little different.
And not for the poor people, maybe at a time.
Well, it has a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. Jimmy, thanks for coming on. I mean, this has been a while in the making.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, Alex. Always good to see you, man.
It's great to see you.
Yeah,
Nothing but the best for you guys. I'm just so happy that you guys have been doing so
thanks.
well.
You
Yeah.
you you too, buddy. You too.
Talking with someone like Jimmy brings me back to a time when I was much younger and a simpler person. My greatest responsibility was telling a story with a pencil every day. It was also a hard time. Finding work, doing the work, and planning for future work was never an easy task for me. At one point in the 90s, someone invited me behind the golden curtain and into the special projects world. And that work saved my bacon on more than one occasion. Years later, when I was the art director for Ralph Lauren, a coworker wanted to do a special projects comic for their brand, and I gave them Jimmy's info. So I followed up with him on how valuable special projects work is for comic creators. He said that kind of work wasn't valuable to him because comic books don't really pay well, and side hustles like this became his main work at times. After 1993, 95% of the comics made never made a dime royalty wise, and page rates at the big two are mostly stuck in late 90s levels. So, special projects and advertising work generally pays about 4 times anything in comics does. I also felt Jimmy was uniquely qualified to answer another question in my mind. If a healthy Marvel and DC is good for the entire industry, what are some ideas the big two could adopt to improve their business? First, Jimmy feels due to the stagnant page rates, interior art has taken a hit because many artists now focus just on cover art. And I'd like to add that the proliferation of variant covers leaves many great artists vulnerable to when the variant boom ends, and it will end. Jimmy really encourages the companies to do less superhero comics and expand genres. Otherwise, they're just selling the same people, the same thing over and over. Jimmy has other sweeping changes companies could make, but he won't give them away without being financially involved. Too many companies have done this to him over the years, and so he approaches things like this with a bit more wisdom. One last bit, I want to apologize for the quality of my audio in our conversation. On 2 occasions, either my digital interface and or Riverside converted my voice into an 80s robot sound, which was impossible for the guest to hear. So this episode was recorded through the Riverside app on my iPad using my AirPods. Fortunately, the rest of the season was already in the can, and none of the other episodes had any issues. Thanks.